We're ready when you guys are, and today under new business, we'll have the IEBC from Chris Rose. So whenever you guys are ready to get started.
Okay, thank you. If we want to go ahead and look at the minutes of the October 7th meeting and approve those.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from the 7th meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is approved. Is there any unfinished business to address? Okay, seeing none, move on to new business, the IEBC by Chris.
IEBC, section 101.1. This is the title that was added to all of the codes where we insert City of Fargo is the name of the jurisdiction. Section 101.2.1, which is page 11, so I'm trying to find it here. This is a new section. The application of the fire code, where work regulated by this code is also regulated by the construction requirements for existing buildings in Chapter 11 of the IFC. Such work shall comply with applicable requirements of both codes. Section 103.1, page 12. This is the City of Fargo is hereby created. This is where we insert the City of Fargo, so it references the City of Fargo twice in the code as the agency. Section 104.2.1, this is a flood section, so it's deleted. Section 104.2.2.1 is amended. This is an existing amendment. This is where we insert the code official is authorized to require an existing building to be investigated and evaluated at the owner's expense. That's the part that we insert, and it's an existing amendment. Section 104.8 is the liability section, and that's in all of the codes, all of the international codes as an amendment. Section 104.10.1, another flood section, that's deleted in its entirety. Section 105.2, work exempt from a permit. This matches the other codes if we take out number 7 and 8, which is re-roofing and window replacement. So they're exempt from permit. Section 109.3.3 and 109.3.10 are two flood sections, so they're deleted as well. There's a new, no, that one's not new. I think this is a new section, 114, the stop work order. It was in previous, I didn't put new in front of my notes, so it's in the IBC, and the way it's stated in the existing building code is the same as we already enforce it, but now it's new in the existing building code. Section 201.3. This is where they call out the terms. This is a longstanding amendment. It's where they call out the definitions in the International Plumbing Code, Private Sewage Disposal Code, the state code, the state electrical code, the flood hazard ordinance, and I think that's it. But this is where they define that we can use their definitions in those codes versus the international electrical and plumbing codes. Section 301.3 alteration. There's new language for enforcement on substantial improvement to buildings and flood hazard areas and new language on accessible buildings. This is currently how we enforce it, just know that it's in there. Section 302.2.1. NFPA 99 is now referenced, typo, sorry, in the IEBC. This is mentioned several times in the 2021, so I'm only going to mention it to you this time. It's in several of the different alteration types, so just know that it's in there. It's in here probably 5 times. Section 303, storm shelters, same thing. It was in the IBC, and now there's a statement in the existing building code that states they need to comply with the ICC 500 standard. I believe it's in the IRC as well. Section 308, carbon monoxide detection, used to be in chapter 5 and they moved it to chapter 3. That's the only change. Section 309, additions and replacements of exterior wall coverings and exterior wall envelopes, which is page 36. The provisions of section 309 apply to all alteration, repairs, additions, relocations of structures, and changes of occupancy regardless of the compliance method. Materials and methods used shall comply with requirements for new construction. Section 401.1.1, which is bleachers and grandstands. Repairs to existing bleachers, grandstands, and folding telescopic seating shall comply with a standard which is ICC 300. I believe that was in the IBC for years. It's just now in the existing building code. Section 401.3, 405.2.6, and 502.3 are all flood sections, so they'll all be deleted. It's a new section, 502.6, enhanced classroom acoustics. In Group E occupancies, enhanced classroom acoustics shall be provided in all classrooms in the addition with a volume of 20,000 cubic feet or less. Enhanced classroom acoustics shall comply with the reverberation time in section 808 of the ICC 117.1, which is also an errata in the book. It refers to section 808 and it says 117.1, but I believe it's 117.1 the new one, 2017, because there is no section 808 in the old one. And this is also in the code several times, in the existing building code several times, so I'm just going to say it the one time. Section 503.2 is a flood section, so that one's deleted. Section 503.4, which is page 5.3. Exception 2 has some new language. Buildings in which the increase in demand capacity ratio is due entirely to the addition of the rooftop supported mechanical equipment, individually having an operating weight of less than 400 pounds, and where the total additional weight of all rooftop equipment placed after initial construction of the building is less than 10% of the roof dead load. For purposes of this exception, roof shall mean the room level above a particular story. So if you meet the 10%, you don't have to go to the IBC. You can stay in the existing building. Section 503.14, 503.15, and 503.16 were all moved from a different section or different chapter. 503.17, locking arrangements in educational occupancies. In E occupancies, Group B educational occupancies, and Group I4 occupancies, egress doors and locking arrangements designed to keep intruders from entering the room shall comply with section 1010.2.8 of the IBC. This is also referenced in chapter 7 of the existing building code, but I will not mention it when we get there. Section 503.18, two-way communication. Where the work area of the alteration exceeds 50% of the building area and the building has elevator service, a two-way communication system shall be provided where required by section 1009.8 of the IBC. Section 505.3.1, control devices. Window opening control devices or fall protection devices complying with ASTM F2090 shall be permitted for use on windows required to provide emergency escape and rescue openings. After operation, to release the control device, allowing the window to fully open, the control device shall not reduce the net clear opening area of the window unit. Emergency escape and rescue openings shall be operational from the inside of the room without the use of any key or tool. That which is also mentioned in chapter 7. They repeat themselves a lot in this book. Section 507.3 is a flood section, which is deleted. Section 603.1, scope. Level 2 alterations include the addition or elimination of any door or window, the reconfiguration or extension of any system, or the installation of any additional equipment, and shall apply where the work area is equal to or less than 50% of the building area, and there's an exception. The movement or addition of non-fixed and movable fixtures, cases, racks, counters, and partitions not over 5'9" in height shall not be considered part of the level 2 alteration. Section 701.3 is a flood section, so that one's deleted. Section 801.3, system installations, which is page 8.1. Requirements related to work area not applicable where the level 2 alteration are limited solely to one or more of the following: mechanical systems, electrical systems, fire protection systems, and abatement of hazardous materials, or window, hardware, operating controls, electrical outlets and signs, or the alteration undertaken for the primary purpose of increasing the accessibility of a facility.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
I got a clarification question. On section 706, I know this wasn't a change, but this is the structural portion where it talks about if you're adding or replacing roofing, you can add up to like 5% of the weight on the roof without having to meet current codes. So I've gone back and forth this with some code officials in Minnesota on schoolwork. If an existing building, let's say it was designed for 30 PSF snow load 30 years ago, and the only thing we're doing to it is, let's say, adding some rooftop unit equipment, we can, when we do that 5% increase, that's 5% just based on whatever the original snow load was for the building, correct?
I think that's the way I would interpret it, but if you're talking about Minnesota, that's Greek.
Yeah, no, so the code official there is saying, if you do add 5%, well, you have to actually use current snow loads when you do that. Well, then every single building you check that's
Will be
more
wrong.
than 20 years old would never work. So your interpretation of that is, if we have a building here in town and you add some roofing to it, as long as you're not going over 5% of the original design loads of, let's say it's 20 PSF dead load and 30 PSF snow load, even though the snow load's higher now, that's irrelevant, right? You can just use that 5% from the original load.
That's the way I would interpret it, but I wonder if I could get back to you and look at the commentary to see if the commentary gives us anything.
Okay.
We do still have one meeting left. And that would actually tie into one of the sections that I previously mentioned with the 400 pounds for the rooftop.
Okay.
I can follow up on it at the next meeting.
Yeah, that'd be good, because basically what happens in some of these like school projects we do in Minnesota is that the second you add one sprinkler pipe to a room, they're making us bring it up to current snow loads, which is crazy. And it costs a lot of money.
Understand they're the authority having jurisdiction,
I know.
and I know you know that.
So I just want to make sure this, I'm not using this to argue with them. It's more just when we have projects here, I want to make sure we don't have to do something like that.
Yep, I can look in the commentary to see if it gives us any guidance. It might. I think we have a commentary in the office. If we don't, I think I can get it electronically.
Okay.
And I think we have a little time before we present the energy code,
Okay.
so.
Thank you.
And now I forgot where we were.
801.3.
Sorry,
801.3, you had
you
just,
don't want to go over anything twice? Okay, 8013, system installations, page 8.1. Requirements related to the work area not applicable where the level 2 alteration, I think we did this one, are limited to solely mechanical systems, electrical systems, window hardware, operating controls, electrical outlets and signs, and alterations undertaken for the primary purpose of increasing the accessibility of the facility. I think we did that one. That's okay. 803.2.3, Group I2, which is page 84, hospitals, for hospitals and nursing homes. In Group I2 occupancies, an automatic sprinkler system shall be installed in accordance with 903.3.1.1 of the IFC, shall be provided in the following locations. Group I2, Condition 1, throughout the work area. Group I2, Condition 2, throughout the work area, where the work area is 50% or less of the smoke compartment. And Group I3, Condition 2, throughout the smoke compartment in which the work occurs, where the work area exceeds 50% of the smoke compartment. Section 803.2.5, other required automatic sprinkler systems. In buildings and areas listed in table 903.2.11.6 of the IBC, where work areas that have exits or corridors shared by more than one tenant, or that have exits or corridors serving an occupant load greater than 30, shall be provided with an automatic sprinkler system under the following conditions. The work area is required to be provided with an automatic sprinkler system in accordance with the IBC applicable to new construction, and the building has sufficient municipal water supply for the design of an automatic sprinkler system available to the floor without installation of a fire pump. Section 904.1.4, page 9-2. This is kind of a long one, in groups A, B, E, F1, H, I1, I3, I4, M, R1, R2, R4, S1, and S2. I think they should have said excluding certain groups, and I think it would have been easier. In buildings with occupancies and groups listed above, areas shall be provided with an automatic sprinkler system protection where all of the following conditions occur. The work area is required to be provided with an automatic sprinkler system protection in accordance with IBC as applicable to new construction, and the building site has sufficient municipal water supply for the design and installation of an automatic sprinkler system, and there's an exception. If the building site does not have sufficient municipal water supply for the design of the automatic sprinkler system, work areas shall be protected by an automatic smoke detection system throughout all occupiable spaces other than sleeping units or individual dwelling units that activate the occupant notification system in accordance with section 907.4, 907.5, and 907.6 of the IBC.
So is this basically saying that in a renovation project, any work area where a sprinkler system would be required in new construction, we have to supply it in existing construction, but it's only confined to the work area. So as an example, if there was a church project or something where you had a assembly space that was over 5,000 square feet and had over the prescribed number of occupants, you'd have to sprinkle that space, but only that space, even if the rest of the building, if it was all new, would have to be sprinkled, but you weren't working in the rest of the building. You'd sprinkle just the work area and then make allowances for future sprinkling of that other area, or what?
That's the way I would interpret it, but now that Ryan's here, I wonder if that conflicts with sprinkler systems in new construction where you can't sprinkle just part of the building.
Because I know you've given us that latitude in the past when we've done projects where there's a phased construction or something going on, and you know you're only working in a certain area, and you're going to bring a sprinkler service in that can handle the whole building, but you're going to start with just sprinkling the areas that you're working in. Because I think it would be pretty heavy lift for, if you were remodeling 5,000 square feet of a 100,000 square foot building, it would be a pretty heavy lift to have to sprinkle the whole building just because you were working in 5,000 square feet of it. I guess that's how I would.
Yeah, I think that is probably correct. I know we had a project recently where they used the existing building code and they were sprinkling the areas they were working in.
Okay.
The issue is kind of where do you terminate that?
Yeah.
And if that needs to be like a fire barrier or something to try to, get a clean break on it.
Contain it, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And the other thing to remember is I think we are in level 3 alteration with this section too, so
Right.
it's the more extensive remodels.
Correct. Yep.
Does that answer the question?
Yep.
Okay. Section 904.1.5, Group I2. In Group I2 occupancies, an automatic sprinkler system installed in accordance with 903.3.1.1 of the IFC shall be provided in the following. In Group I2, Condition 1, throughout the work area. In Group I2, Condition 2, throughout the work area and where the work area exceeds 50% or less of the smoke compartment. And in Group I3, Condition 2, through the smoke compartment in which the work occurs, where the work exceeds 50% of the smoke compartment. Uh, 904.1.3, windowless stories, page 9.2. Work located in a windowless story, as determined in accordance with the IBC, shall be sprinklered when the work area is required to be sprinklered under the provisions of the IBC for newly constructed buildings, and the building site has sufficient municipal water supply for the design and installation of automatic sprinkler system. That's in here a lot. Section 1002, special use and occupancy, which is page 10.1. Compliance with the building code. Where an existing building or part of an existing building undergoes a change of occupancy to one of the special use or occupancy categories as described in Chapter 4 in the IBC applicable to special use and occupancy. 1002.2 Incidental Uses, where a portion of the building undergoes a change of occupancy to one of the incidental uses listed in Table 509 of 509.1 of the IBC, and incidental use shall comply with Section 509 of the IBC applicable to the incidental use. 1002.3 Change of occupancy in healthcare, where the change of occupancy occurs to an I2 or an I1 facility, the work area with the change of occupancy shall comply with the IBC. There's an exception. A change in use or occupancy in the following cases shall not be required to meet the IBC. Group I2 Condition 2 to a Group I2 Condition 1. Group I2 to ambulatory care. Group I2 to Group I1. And Group I4 Condition 2 to Group I1 Condition 1. Section 1002.4 Storage. In Group I2 occupancies equipped throughout with an automatic sprinkler system in accordance with Section 903.3.1.1 of the IBC, where a room 250 square feet or less undergoes a change of occupancy to a storage room, the room shall be separated from the remainder of the building by construction capable of resisting the passage of smoke in accordance with Section 509.4.2 of the IBC. Section 1103.3 and 1201.4 and 1301.3.3 are all flood sections, so they will all be deleted. Section 1301.2, page 13-1. The end of this paragraph is the new part, and I'll tell you when I get there. Existing buildings in which there is work involving additions, alterations, or changes of occupancy shall be made to conform to the requirements of this chapter or the provisions of chapters 6 through 12. The provisions of section 1301.2.1 through 1301.2.6 shall apply to existing occupancies that will continue to be or are proposed to be in groups A, B, E, F, I2, M, R, and S, and the rest of it is the new part. These provisions shall also apply to Group U occupancies, where such occupancies are undergoing a change of occupancy or partial change in occupancy with separations in accordance with Section 1301.2.2. These provisions shall not apply to buildings with occupancies in Groups H, I1, I3, and I4. 1401.2 there is amended. It's the conformance section. The new part is buildings to be moved within the jurisdiction shall comply with provisions of this chapter. Buildings to be moved into this jurisdiction shall comply with the provisions of the International Code for new buildings and shall be certified as to that compliance by an agency approved by the code official. So the majority of the section is deleted and then we insert that part. It would be rare that a commercial building would move into our jurisdiction. Section 1402.6 is a flood section, so that one's deleted. Section 1502, protection of adjoining property. This entire section 1502 is all new. Where retention system is used to provide support of the excavation for protection of adjacent structures, the system shall conform to the requirements in section 1502.2.1 through 1502.2.3. Section 1502.2.1, excavation retention system design. Excavation retention systems shall be designed by a registered design professional to provide vertical and lateral support. Section 1502.2.2, excavation retention system monitoring. The retention system design shall include requirements for monitoring of the system and adjacent structures for horizontal and vertical movement. Section 1502.2.3, retention system removal. Elements of the system shall only be removed or decommissioned where adequate replacement support is provided by backfill or by the new structure. Removal or decommissioning shall be performed in such a manner that protects the adjacent property. Section 1509, water supply for fire protection, just page 15-4 if you're following along. 1509.1, when required. An approved water supply for fire protection, either temporary or permanent, shall be made available as soon as combustible building material arrives on the site. On commencement of vertical combustible construction, and on installation of standpipe systems in buildings under construction in accordance with 1509.1 through 1509.5. And there's an exception. The fire code official is authorized to reduce the new fire flow requirements for isolated buildings or group of buildings in rural areas or small communities where the development of full fire flow requirements is impractical. 1509.2, combustible building materials. When combustible building materials of the building under construction are delivered to a site, a minimum fire flow of 500 gallons per minute shall be provided. The fire hydrant used to provide this fire flow supply shall be within 500 feet of the combustible building materials as measured along an approved fire apparatus access lane. Where the site configuration is such that one fire hydrant cannot be located within 500 feet of all combustible building materials, additional fire hydrants shall be provided to provide coverage in accordance with this section. 1509.3, vertical construction of types 3, 5, 4, and 5 construction. Prior to commencement of vertical construction of types 3, 4, and 5 buildings that utilize any combustible building materials, the fire flow required by sections 1509.3.1 through 1509.3.3 shall be provided, accompanied by a fire hydrant in sufficient quantity to deliver the required for flow and proper coverage. 1509.3.1, fire suppression up to 30 feet. Fire separation up to 30 feet. Where the building of types 3, 4, and 5 construction has a fire separation distance of less than 30 feet from the property lot lines, and an adjacent property has an existing structure or otherwise can be built upon, the water supply provided The water supply shall provide either a minimum of 500 gallons per minute or the entire fire flow required for the building when constructed, whichever is greater. 1509.3.2, fire separation of 30 feet from 30 feet up to 60 feet. Where a building of types 3, 4, or 5 construction has a fire separation distance of 30 feet up to 60 feet from property lot lines, and an adjacent property has an existing structure or otherwise can be constructed upon, the water supply shall provide a minimum of 500 gallons per minute or 50% of the fire flow required for the building when constructed, whichever is greater. 1509.3.3, fire separation of 60 feet or greater. Where a building of types 3, 4, or 5 construction has a fire separation of 60 feet or greater from the property line, a water supply of 500 gallons per minute shall be provided. 1509.4, vertical construction in types 1 and 2 construction. If combustible construction materials are delivered to the construction site, water supply in accordance with section 1509.2 shall be provided. Additional water supply for fire flow is not required prior to commencing vertical construction of types 1 and 2 buildings. 1509.5, standby supply. Regardless of the presence of combustible building materials, the construction type or fire separation distance where a standpipe is required in accordance with section 1506, a water supply providing a minimum flow of 500 gallons per minute shall be provided. The fire hydrant used for this water supply shall be located within 100 feet of the fire department construction supplying the standpipe. That's the end of the existing building code. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, just Ryan can kind of weigh in on this a little bit on, with the fact that a lot of our buildings are built during the time of year when water freezes. Water supply to buildings going up vertically really isn't going to be able to be used. So it really is going to boil down to the hydrants available. So is that how you guys are interpreting this during the wintertime build if you're putting up a 3 or 4 story apartment that's not heated yet?
Right, and so this section really matches 3313 in the IFC. And so they do look like a lot of new requirements, but actually for the city of Fargo, it really won't change much because, when you're gonna go build an apartment building, you've already had to vet through the whole process of the development process. So, and through that development process, the city requires that infrastructure is there prior to building.
Correct.
The only instance that I can think of where we might have to use these sections would be when somebody gets, and it's kind of termed an early building permit, but it's not really an early building permit. It's permission to go kind of build out ahead of the city's infrastructure. And then that's, worked out through an agreement, I believe, between engineering and inspections. And so that even when that occurs, typically by the time they're building the structure, that infrastructure is caught up. So we rarely have a building where combustible materials would be outside of our utilities. So I think for the most part, you won't see this having to be an issue.
Very often.
Yeah.
When you have that situation, you guys deal with it with just running overline supply to it then? Like a 5 or 6 inch, 1,000 feet or something that you got on your trucks?
So for example, one of them that's being built right now is that new workforce academy.
Yeah.
And so right now, primarily what they're working on is foundations and that type of stuff. So, we make sure we have access through some sort of construction road for medical emergencies or some sort of rescue. But your fire threat at that point's a little bit less because the structure is not there. And then the plan would be that as that builds, the utilities would get there. But you're right. I mean, we would make sure that if we needed to, we could lay in hose or something from the nearest hydrant. But it doesn't usually get that far ahead of our infrastructure that it wouldn't be within our capacity to operate.
If it is, though, it's something that needs to be addressed and worked out with you, so you're aware of it, I assume?
Yeah, and we can do that ahead of time through that, like I said, through that development process, because usually if they are working way out ahead of that involves either planning, engineering, inspections. So there's a lot of meetings ahead of that, I think, where we can work through that.
Okay. Very good.
Any other questions for me?
Not on this particular portion, although I know earlier, Justin, we had talked about maybe wanting to look at flood stuff before we wrap everything up, so I just wanted to kind of remind you of that.
I have been talking with the engineering department and they're a little hesitant because they don't understand why the question came up.
Yeah, I think it's been out there for a long time, and it's probably something that needs to be reviewed again and just kind of gone through the structural parts of it and what we're doing to make sure that it's all current. So what's there now, because I think that's 9 years old,
Yeah,
Since 16. I think 15 or 16 is when we,
6 years old. So it's been through a couple code cycles and hasn't been reviewed. And we just, I think due diligence means we should take a look at it with them.
I've been politely pushing. Maybe I need to quit being polite.
should we just go off air, like adjourn this meeting and then just quick chat about it? Should we do that? Just an
It's up to you guys.
offline, quick
Yeah,
conversation on
that'd be
it?
fine. That'd be fine.
I did want to mention the energy code. Typically, we would go every other week. I wonder if we can extend the energy code out to December.
That'd be fine.
We have not picked a date yet, but if it's okay to just follow up with you with a date to review the energy code. It's,
Yeah, I think most of us have all got projects we're trying to get pounded in the ground before freezing weather hits anyway, so wait until it's froze up to get us back here again. I think everybody on the board here would probably say that's fine with us, so.
okay, we'll follow up with an email on when the date is, when we can get a quorum. And then I think that's our last code.
Perfect. All right, anything else for staff reports? Okay,
Yeah, I think so.
motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
All right.
We are adjourned.